Hello there. Welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, where your imagination can roam, even while you rest. Tonight, you are about to drift through a story not of dreams, but of deep time itself, into an age when Earth was far colder, wilder, and stranger than you know it today. Close your eyes, and let me guide you to the frozen edges of memory. Where are you right now? Is it late in the evening, with your room dark and the glow of a small lamp warming the space? Or is it early morning when the world is still and you've stolen a few moments of calm? Wherever you are, I want you to feel that this story is yours. Leave a note in the comments about where you're listening from and whether the ice age still lingers in the soil beneath your own city. And if this journey feels like one worth continuing, remember to like and subscribe, because more nights like this are waiting for you. Now, imagine. You stand at the edge of a great white silence. The world stretches before you not as it does now, with roads, cities and towers, but as an endless expanse of ice. A wall hundreds of meters high rises into the sky, gleaming faintly beneath a pale sun that never climbs high above the horizon. This is not a place meant for comfort. You take a breath, and it cuts your lungs with a sharpness that feels almost metallic. Your eyelashes freeze together, your footprints crunch on crusted snow, and the sound vanishes into the vast emptiness. You probably wouldn't survive this world on your own, not without furs, fire, and knowledge passed down from those who came before you. Yet here you are, walking deeper into a time when the earth itself seemed to sleep beneath blankets of frost. The Ice Age was not a single winter stretched across centuries. It was a rhythm, a slow tide of cold and warmth, advance and retreat, like the breathing of the planet itself. Scientists still argue whether these icy pulses were set only by the slow tilts and wobbles of Earth's orbit, or whether unseen forces, ocean currents, volcanoes, even cosmic dust, helped nudge the balance. But whatever the cause, the result was undeniable. Most of the northern continents disappeared beneath sheets of ice so thick they crushed mountains and carved valleys, reshaping the world in ways you still live with. Picture yourself walking along the edge of one such glacier. It isn't smooth like a skating rink. It groans and shatters, creaking as rivers of blue ice flow slowly downhill, grinding the land beneath them into flour. Here and there, towers of ice stand like cathedrals, collapsing with thunder into frozen rubble. The air itself is alive with echoes, wind screaming across plains, avalanches tumbling in the distance. You may think of ice as stillness, but in truth, it is always in motion. Yet not all of Earth was frozen. If you were to travel far south, you would leave the realm of glaciers behind and step into grasslands stretching farther than your eyes can see. Herds of animals thunder across this cold, dry plain, kicking up dust that hangs in the air like a veil. The mammoth steppe, scientists call it, the richest grazing land of its age. Imagine mammoths, shaggy and immense, their tusks sweeping the snow as they pull up frozen grasses. Beside them move herds of bison, their breath steaming in the cold. Wild horses kick at the ground, seeking roots. This is a world overflowing with life, adapted not to warmth, but to cold. You realize that this frozen age is not barren, it is simply different, and somewhere within this world, firelight flickers. A band of humans, your ancestors, huddles near the edge of a cave. They wear garments stitched with bone needles, fur wrapped tight against the cold. In their hands are tools chipped from flint, edges sharper than any knife you've held. They speak softly, passing down stories about where to find water, when to follow the herds, which plants can heal wounds. One of them strikes flint against pyrite, and sparks leap into a bundle of dried grass. Flame roars to life, orange against the endless white. Fire is more than warmth here. It is survival, a fragile sun carried wherever they go. Scientists still debate how early humans crossed into these icy realms. Did they follow herds across the land bridge of Beringia, the wide, dry plain that once linked Siberia to Alaska? Or did they travel earlier along coastal routes now drowned by the sea? The evidence is fragmentary. Stone points, butchered bones, traces of ash, but every discovery whispers the same truth. People were there, and they endured. You wonder how they dreamed. Did they stand at night beneath skies so clear you could see the shimmer of galaxies? Did they fear the growl of dire wolves echoing beyond the fire's circle? Perhaps they looked up at the unending stars and wondered, just as you do now, why the world was made this way. But let us return to you. You sit listening in your own time, the air warm, the walls steady. Outside the city hums or the countryside rests. But you are safe. The ice age is long past. Its glaciers melted into rivers, its plains turned into forests and farms, and yet, beneath your feet, the bones of mammoths still lie locked in permafrost. The soil in which crops grow once drifted as dust across glacial winds. The rivers that cut your landscape may have begun as torrents of meltwater when the ice retreated. In ways you do not always see, you are still living in the afterglow of that frozen world. So tonight you will walk through it. Together we will trace the slow breath of the planet, from the first creeping glaciers to the last echoes of mammoths on a lonely Arctic island. Each step will bring you deeper into the world of the Ice Age, its storms and silences, its people and animals, its mysteries still unanswered. And as you listen, your mind will settle into the rhythm of a colder earth, and sleep will find you the way spring follows winter. Now take one more slow breath. Feel the weight of blankets against you, as if they were furs pulled tight in a snowbound cave. Let the hum of your room fade into the crackle of imagined fire. The journey has begun. You step further into the white expanse, and the horizon seems to vanish into a haze of ice. The world around you is hushed, muffled, as if wrapped in thick cloth. The very air is heavy, filled with the quiet weight of snow that never melts. These are the endless sheets of white, the glaciers that stretch across continents, swallowing mountains and flattening valleys. Imagine the Laurentide ice sheet in North America, so vast it covered almost half a continent, pressing down on the land with a thickness of more than 3 kilometers, or the Fennoscandian ice sheet in Europe, spreading from Norway to Germany, its frozen mass bending the very crust of the earth beneath it. To walk here is to walk upon an ocean of frozen time, slow-moving but unstoppable. At first glance, glaciers might appear lifeless. They are cold, immense, and seemingly eternal. But as you listen more closely, you hear them speak. A groan echoes through the ice as hidden rivers of meltwater rush below, carving tunnels and carrying ground-up rock away. Crevasses split open without warning, vast cracks that yawn into the frozen body like wounds. Every so often, a thunderous roar shakes the silence as an iceberg calves from the glacier's edge, crashing into a frozen bay below. The Ice Age is not still. It is alive, restless, breathing in rhythms longer than your lifetime, longer than the span of all written history. Scientists still argue about how quickly these giants advanced and retreated. Did glaciers surge forward in sudden pulses, devouring forests and grasslands in just centuries, or did they creep steadily, mile by mile, across millennia? What is certain is that they were powerful sculptors. You can feel it under your feet. Valleys once V-shaped by rivers now widened and deepened into broad U-shapes, gouged out by walls of ice. Scattered across plains are giant boulders, erratics, carried hundreds of kilometers by glaciers before being abandoned like forgotten toys. Some of those stones standing today in farmers' fields or city parks are still silent reminders of the great white tide that once rolled over the land. The sheer scale of it is overwhelming. If you could rise above the earth during the last glacial maximum, about 20,000 years ago, you would see an entire hemisphere draped in frost. Canada, Greenland, Northern Europe, Siberia, all white, gleaming under weak sunlight. Sea ice would stretch far beyond modern coastlines. The oceans themselves would be pulled back, locked up in the frozen sheets. Earth looked like a pale, breathing marble, its equatorial jungles, a narrow green belt encircled by shining deserts of snow. Still, life endured here, even on the very edge of the ice. Plants clung to narrow refuges, mosses and lichens gripping rock faces, hardy shrubs twisting against bitter winds. In summer, brief and fragile, meadows burst into bloom with wild flowers, their colors startling against the backdrop of white. Herds of reindeer migrated across the tundra, nibbling at the tiny shoots. Birds wheeled overhead, nesting in cliffs, raising their young in the short window of warmth. The glaciers were harsh, but they did not silence the pulse of life, they only reshaped it. As you move along the frozen plain, the cold sinks into your bones. The light itself feels different here, thinner, harsher. The sun rises low, circling the horizon, rather than climbing high. Long shadows stretch across the ice, even at midday. Nights are dark and endless, pierced by auroras that shimmer green and violet, curtains of light dancing across the sky. For ancient humans who dared to live here, such nights must have felt both terrifying and divine. Imagine sitting around a fire, wrapped in fur, watching the heavens ripple with unearthly color. Did they believe the sky was alive, whispering secrets in waves of light? Mainstream history tells us that during the height of the Ice Age, whole human populations were pressed into warmer refuges. Southern Europe, Africa, Asia, and the coasts became havens, where people clustered, surviving until the ice retreated. Yet there are whispers of fringe tales, half remembered in oral traditions, suggesting that some groups ventured farther north than once thought, following the herds right up to the glacier's edge. Stone tools found in unexpected places, fuel debates, leaving archaeologists to wonder, were these scattered traces left by bold hunters, or by later peoples wandering into the empty lands? Scientists still argue whether these massive sheets advanced in a steady march, or surged in bursts, sometimes covering ground faster than forests and animals could retreat. What they all agree on is that glaciers were more than frozen rivers. They were engines of transformation. They crushed mountains into dust, sculpted lakes, diverted rivers, and wrote new coastlines. The very world you know today, the fertile valleys, the winding waterways, the carved basins that hold great lakes, was born in the shadow of these endless sheets of white. Let your imagination carry you into that landscape. You walk for hours, but the scenery changes little. White stretches in every direction. Occasionally you stumble upon a ridge of rock, pushed up by the glacier, a morainal wall that marks where the ice once paused in its advance. You climb it and look back, only to see the same blank horizon. Your sense of time frays. Each step feels both eternal and fleeting, as though you are treading not only across frozen earth, but across centuries themselves. The animals that roam here do not see the ice as you do. To them, it is part of the fabric of existence. Woolly mammoths graze at the boundary, shaggy coats catching frost as they move in herds across the plains. Musk oxen dig with their hooves, uncovering lichens beneath the snow. Reindeer migrate tirelessly, their hooves crunching in rhythm, guiding them from one brief season of grass to the next. Predators linger at the edges, dire wolves pacing silently, their breath fogging in the cold air, always waiting for weakness among the herds. And then, there are people, small groups, nomads, wrapped in furs, and carrying everything they own. Their footprints in the snow are light compared to yours. They follow trails along rivers, staying close to patches of open water where fish can be caught. They know every cave, every hollow, where they can find shelter against the cutting wind. Around their necks hang carved amulets, bone pendants etched with symbols whose meanings are lost, but whose intent was clear: protection, remembrance, connection. You try to imagine yourself as one of them. No map, no house, no certainty, only the endless white horizon, and the trust that fire, tools, and kin will see you through. In this age, survival is not only about strength, it is about memory. Every step, every hunt, every story must be passed from one generation to the next. Lose the knowledge, and you are swallowed by the snow. Keep it alive, and you endure, even against the might of glaciers that could grind mountains to sand. So as you rest tonight, picture yourself walking those frozen plains, your breath mixing with mammoth steam, your footsteps lost to snow that never melts. You are small against the white, but you are not alone. The world is vast, cold and overwhelming, but it is also alive, full of rhythm, full of story, and though the glaciers may seem endless, their time too will pass. You move deeper into the frozen story, and the silence around you begins to pulse with a slower rhythm. Beneath the endless sheets of white, something invisible is turning, vast gears of the cosmos, imperceptible to the eye, yet powerful enough to shift the fate of entire continents. These are the engines of cold, the hidden mechanics that drive the Ice Age forward. You pause for a moment, listening not to the wind, not to the cracking of glaciers, but to the deeper breath of the planet itself, as if Earth is guided by a celestial metronome. The truth is that ice does not arrive at random. It is summoned by the tilt, the wobble, and the stretch of Earth's orbit, subtle movements called Milankovitch cycles. Imagine Earth not as a perfect spinning top, but as one that sways, tilts, and shifts ever so slightly over tens of thousands of years. A change of just a few degrees in the planet's tilt can decide whether summers are fierce enough to melt ice or too weak to erase the snow of the previous winter. Over long spans of time, snow that refuses to melt becomes compacted into ice. Ice grows into glaciers, and glaciers grow into empires of white. You think of summer as an inevitability, a warmth you can count on, but in the Ice Age, summer could be a pale, ineffective visitor, its light too weak, its season too short. Year by year, the snow deepened, creeping farther south. This is how glaciers were born, not from one sudden storm, but from countless quiet seasons that tipped the balance ever so slightly toward frost. Scientists still argue whether these orbital rhythms were the only cause. Some believe ocean currents, like Earth's hidden bloodstream, played their own role, circulating warmth or trapping cold in patterns that could magnify the reach of ice. Others point to volcanoes, their eruptions darkening the sky, cooling the surface for years, even decades. Fringe theories whisper about cosmic dust veils or asteroid strikes that could have nudged Earth into deeper chills. The evidence remains debated, scattered across ice cores, sediments, and faint chemical traces locked in ancient rocks. But the pattern of the cycles is undeniable. Earth has always breathed in and out of ages of ice. Picture yourself not as a wanderer now, but as a witness in the sky. If you could watch the planet over hundreds of thousands of years, the ice would look like a tide, advancing and retreating in rhythm. The glaciers would surge south, swallowing valleys and plains, then withdraw like exhausted armies, revealing grasslands and rivers again. Each surge left its scars, moraines, carved rock, lakes gouged into the earth. Each retreat gave life a chance to recolonize, plants spreading, animals migrating, humans following in their footsteps. There is a mainstream truth we carry, that the last great ice age reached its peak about 20,000 years ago, but there were many before it. Stretching back millions of years, Earth has rarely been without ice entirely, though its boundaries have changed again and again. Some scientists even propose that in earlier ages, ice may once have reached almost to the equator, a snowball Earth locked in frost. Whether that vision was global or only regional remains an open question, but it reminds you that cold has always been a sculptor of history. As you walk across the frozen plain in your mind, you begin to notice the evidence of these cycles etched into the land. A ridge of boulders here, a gouged valley there, all speak of glaciers that once advanced, paused and retreated. Even now, far from the Ice Age, you live with their legacy. The Great Lakes in North America, for instance, are immense water bodies carved directly by the ice, their basins deepened by glacial weight, later filled by meltwater. They hold about a fifth of all the fresh water on Earth's surface, a gift left behind by the slow march of ice. You drink from them, fish from them, sail across them, yet they are relics of a vanished frozen empire. The engines of cold also pulled at the seas, When glaciers grew, they locked up so much water that global sea levels dropped more than 100 meters. Imagine the coastlines retreating, exposing plains that today lie beneath waves. Entire new lands appeared. Beringia, a vast stretch of tundra connecting Siberia to Alaska. Doggerland, a rolling plain bridging Britain to Europe. The Sunda Shelf, uniting islands of Southeast Asia into a single sprawling landmass. Humans and animals crossed these spaces, leaving footprints that now lie drowned under oceans. Scientists still argue about the exact timing, whether humans first crossed Beringia during the coldest depths of the Ice Age, or earlier, before glaciers sealed off routes. The archaeological record offers tantalizing hints but no final answers. What is clear is that these hidden highways shaped the migrations of people, the spread of stories, and the peopling of continents. Without the engines of cold-lowering seas, the world map of humanity might look very different. You look up at the sky, clear and piercing. Stars hang like ice crystals scattered across a black velvet dome. To the people of the Ice Age, those stars must have been more than distant suns. They were guides, patterns, and myths, helping hunters find their way across endless plains, helping families measure the seasons. You wonder whether they noticed the slow changes in the heavens, constellations shifting with precession, that long wobble of Earth's axis. Did they realize, in their own way, that the sky was telling them of changes to come? There is something humbling about it all. Here you are, warm and safe in your bed, tracing the cycles of ice across hundreds of thousands of years. The tilt of the planet, the wobble of its path, the faint warmth of the sun at different angles, all these delicate factors conspired to shape the world of mammoths and dire wolves, of cave paintings and stone tools. Your very existence, in some way, owes itself to those cycles, because they forced humanity to adapt, to invent, to endure. And yet the engines of cold remind you that nothing is permanent. The glaciers may have seemed eternal, but they too were bound to rhythms greater than themselves. Advance, retreat, freeze, thaw, birth, extinction. The cycles roll on, whether or not you are here to see them. So you walk onward across the white plain, the sound of your footsteps joining the deeper beat of the planet. The stars above wheel slowly, the glaciers creak and groan, and the world waits for its next breath. Somewhere in the far distance, you sense the first warmth gathering, a reminder that even in an age of ice, change is inevitable. You pause at the base of an icy ridge, and for a moment you close your eyes listening. The wind brushes past your ears, but beneath it you sense another kind of whisper. It is faint, almost imagined, like a sigh held in the chest of the earth. These are the breathings of the planet, and within them lie the secrets of ages. If you could hold a piece of ancient ice to your ear, you would hear them more clearly. The stories trapped in bubbles, the voices of climates long gone. Scientists know this truth. Ice is more than frozen water. It is a time capsule, each layer a page in Earth's diary. As snow falls year after year, it compresses into firn, then into ice, locking away tiny bubbles of air. Those bubbles are not just empty spaces, they are breath, drawn from an atmosphere tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years old. When scientists drill cores deep into the heart of Antarctica or Greenland, they recover cylinders of ice that stretch back nearly 1 million years. Each layer preserves a season, a century, an age. Imagine holding one of these ice cores in your hand. It glistens faintly under laboratory lights, translucent blue-white, with delicate rings running through it like tree growth lines. Inside, microscopic bubbles shimmer like beads of glass. Some contain more carbon dioxide, some less. Some carry traces of volcanic ash, the ghost of ancient eruptions. Others hold chemical signatures of dust, carried across continents. These frozen breaths tell of summers weak and winters strong, of fires that darkened skies, of oceans that exhaled or withheld their warmth. Scientists still argue about the sharp rises and falls they see in these cores. Why did carbon dioxide surge so rapidly at certain times, melting ice and reshaping climates? Was it oceans stirring differently, or forests shrinking and regrowing, or something else entirely? The debates continue, but the evidence itself is undeniable. The breath of the planet has never been steady. It has pulsed, quickened, faltered, and strengthened, like the heartbeat of something alive. As you walk along the glacier's edge, you imagine these breaths as actual whispers seeping from cracks in the ice. They murmur of times when mammoths thrived, when reindeer roamed farther south than they do today, when humans painted their stories on stone walls by torchlight. They murmur also of colder times, when survival teetered on a knife's edge, when hunger pressed families to follow herds across dangerous ground. If you listen long enough, the breath of the planet becomes a lullaby, steady but tinged with change. Mainstream history points to one of the great lessons learned from these frozen records. Climate does not change slowly and gently. Sometimes it lurches. A sudden surge in temperature, a collapse of ice sheets, a shift in ocean currents. These are written in abrupt changes in the ice layers, so sharp that scientists can pinpoint them to decades, not millennia. For the people living through them, those shifts must have felt like the world itself turning upside down. One generation might know endless cold, the next creeping warmth, and then there are the more curious, fringe interpretations. Some believe that ice cores hold evidence not only of earthly shifts but of cosmic events, dust from comets perhaps, or subtle traces of extraterrestrial influences. While mainstream science is cautious, these ideas linger at the edges of debate, tantalizing with the possibility that Earth's breath is entangled with the wider cosmos. Scientists still argue whether unusual spikes in particles or isotopes mark global catastrophes or simply the quirks of a restless planet. You bend down and scoop a handful of snow, pressing it between your fingers until water trickles down your glove. The snow is young, but you imagine what it would mean if you held the ancient ice itself. To taste it would be to sip the atmosphere of another world. The world of mammoths and dire wolves, of glaciers towering over forests. The very air you would breathe has been recycled countless times since then, but in that ice it lingers untouched, a relic of vanished skies. There is something comforting in this thought. Just as your own breath fogs in the cold air around you, the earth itself has been breathing all along, leaving traces for the future. The glaciers you walk upon are not merely frozen, they are storytellers waiting for someone patient enough to read them. As you continue forward, the horizon begins to blur in the pale light. The land beneath the ice groans softly, adjusting under its weight. Somewhere far away, perhaps in a lab today, a scientist peers into a slice of ice and measures gases with delicate instruments, trying to translate what you now hear as whispers. Their work is meticulous, their debates passionate, but in the end it is all about the same question: what has Earth been saying to us all along? And as the whisper of the planet's breath fades back into silence, you realize that you are walking in a place where time itself is frozen, yet never still. The glacier shifts beneath you, the wind carries flakes across your path, and the breath of ages waits within, as patient as sleep. You walk further across the frozen landscape, and soon you reach the place where the ice becomes a sculptor. Here the glaciers reveal not only their size but their power. Imagine mountains ground down like chalk beneath a knife, valleys widened as though by a colossal chisel, and plains scattered with giant stones that look wildly out of place. These are the fingerprints of ice, the artistry of a planet remade by the pressure of frozen rivers that moved not with haste, but with implacable patience. Glaciers are alive in a way few expect. They flow, though so slowly you might not notice in a single day, but over centuries their weight is unstoppable. Rock beneath them cracks, crumbles, and finally yields, pulverized into fine powder known as glacial flour. This flour, lifted by the wind, can tint rivers turquoise and spread across distant lands, nourishing soils for ages to come. When you step on such soil in your time, planting fields of grain or walking through prairies, you are treading on the powdered bones of mountains sacrificed to the age of ice. The valleys tell the story most vividly. Once upon a time, rivers carved slender channels through highlands, leaving behind sharp V-shaped gorges, but when the glaciers advanced, they pressed against those same valleys, widening and deepening them into sweeping U-shapes. If you've ever stood in Yosemite Valley or gazed at the fjords of Norway, you have witnessed this glacial signature firsthand. These places were carved not by water alone, but by slow rivers of ice grinding relentlessly through granite and basalt. Scattered across the plains, you notice enormous stones, sometimes taller than a house. They look as if they have fallen from the sky. In truth, they were carried by ice, plucked from one mountain, and set down hundreds of kilometers away when the glacier melted. These erratics are monuments, heavy travelers left behind when the glaciers retreated. To ancient people who found them, they may have seemed like gifts or warnings from the gods. Some cultures wove myths about stones that walked or were thrown by giants. Scientists today can trace their origin, identifying the bedrock they once belonged to, piecing together the journeys they made upon frozen highways. Mainstream history reminds us of one of the greatest legacies of glacial sculpting, the Great Lakes of North America. These vast inland seas, Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario, were gouged out by the Laurentide ice sheet as it advanced and retreated. When the ice finally melted, the basins filled with water, forming lakes so immense that together they hold nearly 1/5 of all the surface fresh water on Earth. Even now, when you stand at their shores, you are gazing at the imprint of the Ice Age. Without glaciers, these lakes would not exist, and the lives of millions of people today would be utterly different. Scientists still argue about the pace of such sculpting. Did glaciers create these features gradually, in steady erosion, or were there sudden surges of ice, fast flows called ice streams, that carved the land with bursts of violence? The debate continues, but the evidence of their work is visible everywhere, from scratched bedrock known as striations, to kettle lakes formed when buried ice blocks melted away, leaving behind pockmarks in the land. As you imagine this frozen artistry, you come across a vast cliff where the ice has recently retreated. The face of the rock is polished smooth, gleaming as though it has been sanded by a divine hand. Deep grooves cut across it, all aligned in one direction, the marks of stones dragged along the glacier's belly. You place your palm against the cold stone, and in that touch, you feel time itself. This is not just a cliff, it is a page of history, inscribed not with words but with scars. Fringe ideas linger here as well. Some suggest that great floods released by melting glaciers, the so-called outburst floods, were remembered as legends of deluges in ancient cultures. Indeed, places like the Scablands of Washington state were carved by catastrophic torrents when ice dams burst, releasing walls of water that thundered across the land. Imagine standing there, watching a flood taller than any skyscraper roar through valleys, sweeping away forests, carving canyons in a matter of days. Scientists agree such events happened, but still argue about how often, how suddenly, and how much they shaped human memory of a world remade by water. You walk on, and the land seems restless, littered with these glacial gifts. Ridges rise up, moraines, marking the front lines where glaciers paused before retreating again. Kettles, striations, erratics, valleys, all pieces of a puzzle that tell you the story of a moving, grinding giant. In the silence, you imagine the sound it must have made, an endless rumble, a deep groan, punctuated by cracks like thunder as ice fractured and boulders tumbled. To live near such power would have been both terrifying and awe-inspiring. But these scars also became invitations. Where glaciers retreated, they left behind lakes and rivers, teeming with fish, soils rich for plants, valleys that funneled herds. Humans followed, settling along these paths, weaving their lives into landscapes, shaped by the white hand of ice. What seems desolate in the moment becomes fertile in the aftermath. a reminder that destruction and creation are often two sides of the same coin. So you keep walking, following the trails left by vanished glaciers. The mountains are lower now than they once were, their jagged peaks shaved down to smoother lines. Rivers you pass flow in directions they did not before, redirected by the carving of new valleys. The land is not just ground, it is story. Each ridge, each stone, each lake tells you that Earth is not fixed, not static, but alive, sculpting and resculpting itself through forces vast and patient. And as the sky grows darker above you, you understand the glaciers were not only destroyers, they were artists, reshaping a canvas on which future generations, including you, would one day walk. You tread onward, and the crunch of snow beneath your feet fades into a softer sound, as though the ice itself is sighing. You've reached the edge of the frozen sheets, and here the land tells a different story, not of carving and grinding, but of thirst. So much of the world's water is locked in the glaciers that the seas themselves have retreated, pulled back like a tide gone out and never fully returned. You stand now on ground that in your own time would be hidden under waves. The waters have been pulled away, and with them, coastlines are rewritten. Imagine the world map as you know it, then strip away more than 100 meters of ocean. Vast plains appear where there are now seas. Bays stretch farther outward. Islands link together, forming bridges where only water lies today. In Southeast Asia, the Sunda Shelf unites the scattered islands into a single mass of land as large as a continent. To the north, Beringia stretches wide, connecting Siberia to Alaska with tundra that herds of mammoths and reindeer traverse. In Europe, the North Sea is drained into a rolling plain called Doggerland, where rivers wander lazily across fields that would one day be swallowed by the tides. Here in the Ice Age you walk upon these exposed shelves. The air is colder and drier than modern seas, and the wind stirs dust across endless horizons. Herds of animals graze where waves will someday roll. Wolves prowl the grasses, where fish will one day swim. And humans too move across these plains, unaware that they are walking a fleeting gift of geography, a highway born from ice. Mainstream history records these migrations in bones, tools, and the faint traces left behind. From Beringia, humans crossed into the Americas, perhaps chasing herds, perhaps wandering after firewood, perhaps simply curious. In Doggerland, people thrived for thousands of years, leaving behind hearths, flint blades, and fishing spears that now lie buried beneath the sea floor. Scientists still argue exactly when and how these migrations occurred. Did humans cross Beringia during the coldest depths, when ice locked them in, or during brief warmer windows when food was more plentiful? The timing is debated, but the result is clear. The lowered seas rewrote the story of humanity. You walk farther out onto the exposed shelf, and the strangeness of it deepens. What you know as ocean is now horizon, stretching on and on. Rivers cut through the plain, their waters seeking the distant edge where the sea begins again. Some carve deep canyons into the earth, canyons that will later be drowned and become fjords. Others vanish into marshes and shallow lakes, feeding grasslands where giant ground sloths lumber and woolly rhinos graze. The cries of birds echo, flocks wheeling overhead, their wings scattering sunlight across the plains. Scientists still debate whether people adapted quickly to these shifting coastlines. Some suggest they were master navigators even then, crafting boats to cross rivers and shallow seas, spreading along coasts with surprising speed. Others argue they were land-bound wanderers, moving step by step, their migrations dictated by the slow spread of herds and vegetation. The truth may lie somewhere between, a tapestry of walkers and sailors, explorers and settlers, each adjusting to a world where the seas rose and fell like breathing. The quirky fringe tales of these drowned lands persist in myth. Stories passed down by descendants of those ancient people speak of lost lands swallowed by the sea. Legends of Atlantis echo faintly here, though the specifics are mythologized. Still, the memory of Doggerland's drowning, of coasts creeping inland, of once fertile plains vanishing beneath waves, may have survived in oral traditions. To those who lived here, the retreat of the sea was a gift, but the return of the waters was a slow disaster, a reminder that nothing is permanent. Close your eyes for a moment and picture standing on Doggerland at dusk. The sky glows faintly pink, herds graze in the distance, and a human settlement, small huts of wood and hide, sits beside a river. Smoke curls upward, the scent of roasted fish drifting on the wind. Children play in the grasses, their laughter sharp and clear. The people do not know that in millennia to come, the sea will swallow their homes, that their hearthstones will rest beneath shifting sand. To them the land is eternal. But you know the secret. This is borrowed ground, soon to be claimed again by the waters. You walk further, and the ground softens beneath you, becoming damp, as though the sea is trying to reclaim its lost territory. Pools of water collect in hollows, reflecting the pale sky. Somewhere nearby, mammoths trumpet, their voices deep and resonant, carrying across the plains. Reindeer clatter past in migration, hooves drumming the earth. Predators trail them at a distance, patient, hungry, watchful. The plain is alive, a stage crowded with actors who have no idea their world is temporary. And yet, isn't all land temporary? Even the continents shift, colliding and parting, birthing mountains and seas. You realize that the Ice Age only made this truth visible on a scale humans could feel in their bones. One generation knew dry land where their children would one day find only waves. One hunter crossed Beringia, where his descendants would see nothing but storm-tossed seas. The waters pulled away, then surged back, teaching humanity that the ground beneath their feet could never be entirely trusted. As you sit on this exposed plain, you scoop a handful of dust. It trickles between your fingers, fine as flour, lifted by winds from far-off glaciers. This soil will one day vanish beneath salt water, but for now it nourishes grasses, flowers and herds. The animals graze without fear of the returning ocean. Humans hunt, build fires, sing songs. Life continues, blind to the tides of millennia. You take a deep breath, and the air here tastes different, crisper, with the faint tang of minerals exposed by retreating seas. It carries the scent of distant fires, the musk of animals, the sharpness of salt just at the edge of awareness. You are standing in a place between two worlds, a threshold where ocean and land trade places every few thousand years. And as the sun sinks lower, shadows lengthen across the plain, and you hear the sigh of waves far, far away, waiting patiently to return. The waters have pulled away, but they will not be gone forever. The wind shifts, and the landscape before you changes once more. Gone are the endless ridges of ice, and the drowned shelves of sea. Now you stand upon a wide, windswept plain, where sky and earth blur into one horizon. The grass beneath your boots is dry, brittle, and yet astonishingly alive. You have stepped into the mammoth steppe, one of the most extraordinary ecosystems the world has ever known. It stretches from Spain across the whole of Eurasia, across the land bridge of Beringia, and into North America. Imagine a single, unbroken corridor of grassland, wider than any savanna of Africa, longer than any prairie you have ever seen. It is here that life thrives against the cold, a paradox of abundance in the shadow of ice. At first glance, the steppe seems austere. Low grasses ripple in the wind, punctuated by wildflowers that bloom in brief summers. Scrubby willows crouch close to the ground, shaped by icy gales, yet within this seemingly meagre world, herds move in their millions. Mammoths, their shaggy coats draped like cloaks of frost, plod across the plain, their tusks curl like ivory crescents, sweeping snow aside to uncover buried shoots. Beside them, bison cluster together, thick-necked and wary, stamping their hooves to test the frozen ground. Wild horses dash in skittish bursts, their manes whipping like banners. Musk oxen graze with quiet determination, their curved horns gleaming faintly. The air hums with life. The earth shakes beneath the tread of hooves. This is the mammoth steppe, and it is not barren, it is bursting. Scientists call it the most productive cold ecosystem in history, a place where biomass, the sheer weight of living creatures, was astonishingly high. The grasses, though low and humble, nourished giants. You walk with the herd, listening to the deep rumbles of mammoths as they communicate in tones too low for your ears to fully hear. Calves stumble after their mothers, trunks seeking reassurance. The herd moves with a rhythm as old as the plains themselves, migration etched into their very blood. You feel small beside them, yet strangely safe, as though their bulk shields you from the emptiness of the horizon. Predators are never far. You sense them before you see them, the flicker of movement in the distance, the glint of eyes low against the grass. Saber-toothed cats, with fangs like daggers, lie in wait. Dire wolves prowl in packs, lean and tireless, their howls carried on the wind. Cave lions, larger than any lion you know, stalk silently, their golden coats blending into the grasslands. To walk the steppe is to walk through a balance of abundance and danger, where life and death are never far apart. Mainstream history tells us that this ecosystem supported not only animals but humans as well. Bands of hunters followed the herds, using stone-tipped spears and clever tactics to bring down prey far larger than themselves. Imagine a group of them, wrapped in furs, creeping low through the grass as mammoths graze ahead. They signal with gestures, silent and urgent, and then at the right moment, they surge forward with fire and weapons, scattering the herd. The hunt is perilous, yet a single kill could feed a community for weeks. But there are quirks here too, details that feel almost like stories whispered by the land. For instance, in Siberia, remains of mammoths have been found with buttercups still in their mouths, preserved in permafrost. Did they fall suddenly in storms, their last meals frozen in time? Some fringe thinkers once claimed these animals were flash frozen, captured in catastrophic events. Mainstream science is more cautious, pointing instead to accidents in bogs or sudden weather changes. Yet the mystery of those preserved flowers lingers, a tender detail in a world of giants. Scientists still argue about how the mammoth steppe functions so well. How could such a cold, dry land support so much life? Some say it was the grasses, uniquely adapted to the harsh climate, their roots locking in nutrients, their growth rapid and resilient. Others suggest that the animals themselves maintained the system, grazing and trampling in ways that prevented shrubs and trees from taking over, keeping the steppe open and fertile. In this view, the mammoths were not merely residents but gardeners of their own world. As you walk farther, you notice the steppe changes with subtlety. In summer the grasses are green, dotted with red poppies and blue gentians. Butterflies dance above the blooms, and bees hum faintly. Birds wheel overhead, cranes, geese, and small songbirds, all taking advantage of the brief abundance. In winter, the same land hardens into a frozen desert, snow crusting the grasses, wind scouring the plains. The herds dig tirelessly for food, their endurance tested against the season. To live here is to live with constant movement, always searching, always adjusting. Picture standing with a group of humans as night falls. They have built a shelter of mammoth bones and hides, a dome-like hut glowing faintly with firelight. The walls creak in the wind, but the warmth inside is real. Children huddle close to the flames, their faces painted with ochre. Elders speak softly, telling stories of the herds, of spirits that guard the animals, of the endless dance of life and death. For these people, the steppe is not just home, it is sacred, its rhythms woven into their beliefs. The quirky side of their lives reveals itself in their art. Ivory figurines carved into the shapes of animals, beads made of bone and shell, tools etched with patterns. Some objects are practical, some purely symbolic, all a testament to the human urge to create, even in the harshest conditions. You realize that on these steppes, surrounded by predators and bound to the cold, humans still dreamed. They still carved beauty from bone. The steppe stretches on, endless, but in its repetition lies a kind of calm. The herds move, the predators follow, the humans adapt. The cycle continues year after year, century after century, as steady as the turning stars. And though the glaciers loom to the north, their white silence pressing against the horizon, here life pulses brightly, defiantly. You lie down in the grass for a moment, feeling the earth vibrate beneath you as a herd passes nearby. The scent of mammoth musk drifts on the wind. Above you, the night sky unfolds, glittering with more stars than you have ever seen. Somewhere out there, the engines of cold continue their slow turning, shaping the fate of this world. But here, in the mammoth steppe, you feel the richness of life against all odds. It is a reminder, even in an age of ice, the earth found ways to thrive. The horizon darkens, and as you continue across the mammoth steppe, a strange haze begins to drift over the land. At first it seems like a storm gathering far away, a wall of mist advancing with the wind. But as it draws nearer, you realize it is not mist at all. It is dust, fine pale particles lifted from the ground and carried high into the sky. The air thickens with it, turning the light of the sun into a muted glow. The Ice Age was not only a world of ice and grass, it was also a world of dust in the sky. This dust was born from glaciers themselves. Imagine ice sheets grinding down mountains, crushing rock into powder so fine it feels like flour. The winds, restless and fierce in the cold, picked up this flour and scattered it across continents. Vast clouds stretched for hundreds of kilometers, settling eventually into blankets of lows, fine-grained soil that piled into layers tens of meters deep. Even today, some of the world's most fertile farmlands, across China, Ukraine, and the American Midwest, are built upon these ancient deposits, the gifts of glaciers that shredded stone and let the wind deliver it. Walking into one of these dust storms feels like stepping into another world. The air stings your eyes, scratches your throat, and muffles every sound. You shield your face with your sleeve, blinking through the pale cloud. Around you, mammoths appear as ghostly silhouettes, their massive shapes fading in and out of sight. Herds press together, uneasy, while predators retreat to sheltered hollows. Even the rivers look different, their waters clouded with silt, turning them an opaque turquoise that glows strangely under the dimmed sun. Mainstream history tells us that these loess deposits became foundations of agriculture thousands of years later. Without them, human civilization may never have flourished as it did. The Yellow River Valley in China, for instance, drew life from these fertile soils, enabling farming that fed dynasties. The plains of North America, too, owe much of their richness to Ice Age dust. Even now, as you eat bread, corn, or rice, you are tasting the distant legacy of wind-blown lows. Scientists still argue about the scale and timing of these dust storms. Were they constant, faint veils drifting across the land, or did they arrive in violent bursts, blackening the sky for days? The truth likely lies in both, a constant drizzle of particles punctuated by ferocious tempests when winds howled across bare ground. The climate of the Ice Age was dry, the seas locked away in ice, rainfall scarce. Where vegetation faltered, dust rose, unmoored, becoming the breath of the land itself. You kneel down and scoop a handful of this fine powder from the ground. It slips between your fingers like silk, so light that the breeze steals it before it reaches the earth again. This is the substance of fertility, the building block of future harvests, and yet here in the Ice Age, it is also a burden, clogging lungs and dimming skies. The duality is striking. What seems like desolation becomes abundance when time has passed. There are stranger tales woven into the dust as well. Some fringe thinkers have suggested that dust storms might have influenced human migrations, forcing groups to abandon barren, choked landscapes for greener refuges. Others even wonder whether dust in the atmosphere altered the very climate, cooling or warming regions in subtle ways. While these debates remain unsettled, what cannot be denied is that humans living here knew the dust intimately. They felt it on their skin, breathed it into their lungs, and saw it transform their world. Picture a small band of humans caught in one of these storms. They huddle together, pulling cloaks tight against the wind. Children cough, pressing faces into their mothers' fur-wrapped shoulders. Hunters grip their spears, not in readiness to fight, but simply to hold on against the gale. The fire they carried sputters and dies in the choking air, leaving only the howl of wind and the fine sting of dust. They wait it out, crouched low, hoping the storm will pass quickly. When it does, the sky clears again, but everything is coated in a pale film, their tools, their hair, their very skin. Yet they endure, for enduring is the rhythm of the Ice Age. As you walk onward, the storm begins to thin. The sun reappears, hazy and low, casting an orange light across the plains. The land looks transformed, as though covered by a faint veil. In the distance, ridges of lows rise like hills, sculpted by the wind into soft rolling forms. These hills will stand for thousands of years, holding within them the record of countless storms, countless breaths of the glaciers. You climb one of these lows hills, the soil beneath your feet crumbly and light. At the top, you pause to look back over the plain. It is vast, endless, and yet softened now, almost dreamlike in the fading dust. The mammoths below graze again, as if nothing has changed. Wolves prowl once more at the edges of the herd. Humans, tiny in the distance, gather wood and coax new sparks to life. The storm has passed, but its memory lingers in every layer of soil, in every breath you take. The quirky side of this landscape reveals itself in its quiet power. Lows, though fine and fragile, can hold cliffs that stand steep and tall, seemingly impossible for such delicate material. In places like China's Lows Plateau, entire villages would one day be carved into these deposits, homes dug into the earth itself. Imagine the astonishment of Ice Age wanderers if they could glimpse that future, that the very dust choking their lungs would one day shelter generations. Scientists still debate the exact origins of all this lows. Was it carried mostly from the grinding edges of glaciers, or from deserts that expanded under cold, dry skies? The answer may be both. What matters more is that it spread across continents, a reminder that the breath of glaciers did not end at their edges. Their influence reached far, into soils, into rivers, into the very air. You take one last look at the sky. A few wisps of dust still drift, glowing gold in the sunset. It feels as though the land itself is breathing, exhaling rock, inhaling silence, marking time in grains, too small to notice, except when they blanket the horizon. And as night falls, you realize the Ice Age was not only a world of white and bone, but also a world of grey veils and golden dust. A world where even the air carried the story of glaciers, and where the future fertility of humanity was already being sown, storm by storm, across the sleeping earth. The dust finally settles, and when the air clears, the horizon unfolds into something breathtaking. Before you lies the heart of the mammoth steppe at its fullest. And here, life surges with a power so unexpected that you forget for a moment that you are standing in an age of cold. This is the realm of giants, a place so alive that it hums with movement, sound, and breath. It is here, among the swaying grasses and shimmering herds, that you understand why scientists call the mammoth steppe one of the richest ecosystems Earth has ever seen. You begin walking into the plain, and the ground itself vibrates beneath your steps. It is not the earth trembling, it is the endless pounding of hooves. Mammoths stretch to the horizon, their shaggy coats glowing in the morning light, steam curling from their trunks as they forage through snow to uncover frozen grasses. Each step they take is deliberate, immense, leaving deep impressions that fill with frost. Calves walk close to their mothers, occasionally stumbling, their squeaks rising into the wind. The herd moves like a single body, thousands of individuals bound together by instinct and memory. Beside them, wild horses gallop in bursts, their flanks slick with frost, their manes snapping like banners. Their energy crackles against the still air, breaking the monotony of winter with sudden flashes of movement. Reindeer pass steadily, their hooves clicking rhythmically as they dig at the snow for lichens. Musk oxen, thick-coated and formidable, lower their heads to butt at the ice, breaking through to the tender shoots below. It is not just the size of these animals that overwhelms you, it is their abundance. Herd after herd moves across the plain, a living tide that reshapes the horizon. For every mammoth you see, another lumbers just beyond the hill. For every bison, another shadow joins the herd. The land, cold and harsh as it is, thrums with vitality. Scientists marvel at this paradox. How could a frozen world, dry and stingy with rainfall, support so much life? Some argue it was the grasses themselves, finely tuned to survive with little water, capable of storing nutrients and regrowing quickly under the hooves of grazers. Others believe it was the animals who shaped the land, their trampling, grazing and fertilizing, maintaining the ecosystem in a delicate balance. Scientists still argue whether the mammoth steppe was created by ice or by the creatures that lived upon it. Perhaps it was both, an eternal partnership between land and life, but for every grazer there is a shadow. You sense it now, moving along the edge of your vision. Predators stalk these plains with patience, their survival bound to the herds. A dire wolf lifts its head, golden eyes glinting as it scents the wind, larger and heavier than the wolves you know today. These hunters worked in packs, bringing down prey much larger than themselves. Not far away, a saber-toothed cat crouches low in the grass, its long fangs gleaming faintly as it prepares to lunge. A cave lion paces, muscles coiled beneath golden fur, its presence more silent but no less lethal. To live on this plain is to live in balance, plenty on one side, danger on the other. You continue walking until you reach a rise in the land. From here, the view stretches endlessly, a panorama of life. Imagine the sounds, the trumpeting of mammoths, the pounding of hooves, the bellow of bison, the sharp cries of birds circling overhead. Imagine the scents, musk dust, the sharp tang of cold, the faint sweetness of flowers that somehow persist in summer. Imagine the feeling, the earth alive beneath your feet, its surface quivering with movement. This is not a barren world, it is abundance disguised beneath snow. Mainstream history tells us that humans thrived here too. They followed the herds, carrying spears tipped with stone or bone, knowing that the survival of their families depended on a successful hunt. Imagine crouching among a group of hunters at dawn. They whisper, pointing toward the grazing bison ahead. Their spears are ready, fire-hardened and sharp. Their clothing, stitched carefully from hides with bone needles, shields them from the wind. One hunter moves forward, silent as the snow, signaling with a glance. Then the group charges together, their shouts rising to startle the herd, their weapons flashing in the pale light. It is dangerous work. Many hunts fail. Some hunters are injured, but a single kill can feed the group for weeks. In quiet moments, those same humans sit by fires, carving mammoth ivory into beads, shaping figurines of women with exaggerated curves, symbols we now call Venus figurines. Children play with tiny carved animals, learning the world through toys shaped from bone, and in the evenings, elders tell stories of the herds, of the predators, of spirits that walk in the snow. The mammoth steppe is not just a place of survival, it is also a cradle of imagination, of myth, of art. There are quirky mysteries here too. In Siberia, mammoths have been found preserved in permafrost with food still in their mouths, wildflowers, grasses, buttercups. Some say they were caught in sudden storms, frozen almost instantly. Others believe they wandered into bogs, perishing quickly and sealing their last meals within. Fringe theories once claimed catastrophic cosmic events flash froze them, but most scientists now favor more mundane, if still dramatic, explanations. Still, the image of a mammoth stilled in mid-bite lingers in your mind, haunting and strangely tender. You walk deeper into the steppe, and the cycle of life continues around you. A predator lunges, scattering a herd of horses. Birds swoop to catch insects startled from the grass. A fox darts, clever and small, snatching what the giants overlook. Above, the sky glows pale blue, the sun low, the wind restless. The entire landscape feels like a living organism, every part connected to another. And yet, even here change stirs. The climate does not stand still. Summers will someday grow warmer, shrubs will creep into the grasslands, forests will return, the mammoth steppe will fade, its abundance dissolving into new ecosystems. But for now, as you stand in the heart of it, it feels eternal, an endless kingdom of giants, buzzing with life, echoing with trumpets and howls. You lie down in the grass, the earth warm beneath the sun, despite the cold air. The herd moves in the distance, and you close your eyes, letting the sounds of the steppe wash over you like waves. The Ice Age may be harsh, but here in this place of abundance, you feel the pulse of life stronger than anywhere else. And in that pulse you find comfort, a reminder that even in the coldest times, the earth never ceased to breathe life into every corner it could. Night deepens on the mammoth steppe, and though the herds rest, the land is never truly quiet. When the last glow of twilight slips below the horizon, new shapes stir in the darkness. Shadows lengthen across the grass, eyes gleam low to the ground, and the hush of the plain fills with tension. This is the hour of hunters. The Ice Age is not only a world of giants, but a world of those who stalked them. You can feel it in the stillness. The steppe belongs as much to predators as it does to the herds. You walk softly now, as though your footsteps might give you away. To your left, you hear the faint crunch of snow and see the silhouette of a dire wolf. Larger than the wolves of your time, with massive jaws and powerful shoulders, it moves low and fluid, its paws silent against the frost. Soon others appear, slipping from the shadows, an entire pack, their golden eyes glowing in the starlight. They are patient, disciplined, moving in perfect coordination. Somewhere ahead, a young horse has strayed from the herd. The wolves wait, circling, tightening, their hunger a silent thread pulling them closer. Farther on, crouched among the grasses, lies another hunter. The saber-toothed cat, Smilodon, is massive, its forelimbs thick and muscular, its canines glinting like daggers under the moon. Its every motion is deliberate, its breathing steady, as it waits for the moment when the herd's guard drops. With a sudden surge, it could leap upon its prey, driving those long teeth deep into a bison's neck. You almost shudder at the thought, yet there is a strange elegance to it. The predator, as sculpted by evolution, as perfectly as the mammoth is. And then, in the distance, a deeper shadow moves. The cave lion, larger than any lion alive today, it prowls the steppe with silent authority. Its mane is short, perhaps absent, its body sleek, its muscles fluid. This is a hunter that does not need to rush. It stalks with confidence, knowing that every creature on the plain feels its presence. You sense the tension ripple across the grass, herds shifting uneasily, aware that the balance of life teeters with every step the lion takes. Mainstream history reminds us that these predators were not only solitary dangers, but competitors with humans themselves. Hunters of the Ice Age did not just fear the cold or hunger, they also had to contend with apex predators who would steal their kills, shadow their camps, even threaten their lives. Imagine a small group of humans gathered around a fire at night, their spears close at hand. Just beyond the firelight, the eyes of wolves gleam. The hunters know they are being watched, their food coveted, their firelight both shield and lure. Survival required courage, vigilance, and sometimes battles not just with the elements, but with the beasts who ruled the darkness. Scientists still argue about the exact roles of these predators in shaping the ecosystem. Were dire wolves relentless pack hunters, dominating the plains, or opportunists, scavenging as often as they killed? Did saber-toothed cats strike quickly and rely on sheer strength, or were they more ambush-oriented, lurking near cover to surprise prey? Did cave lions hunt in prides like their modern cousins, or did they stalk alone? The fossil record leaves hints, skulls, jaws, bite marks on bones, but the full stories remain elusive. The debates continue, as though even now, the predators guard their secrets. Among these giants of tooth and claw, there are stranger, quirkier figures too. The short-faced bear, for example, looms in legend as one of the most intimidating carnivores of the Ice Age. Taller than any human when standing on its hind legs, it may have weighed nearly a ton. Its long limbs suggest it could run swiftly, covering ground with unnerving ease. Some scientists believe it was less a hunter and more a kleptoparasite, stealing kills from others through sheer intimidation. Imagine sitting by your freshly hunted deer, only to hear the thunder of paws, to look up and see a bear taller than you could ever imagine, forcing you to retreat as it claims your hard-won meal. Whether hunter or thief, the short-faced bear must have been a terror in its own right. The The quirky fringes of speculation sometimes paint even darker images. There are old theories that humans may have worshipped or feared these predators in ways beyond the practical. Cave paintings show lions, mammoths, bison, but the lions and predators often loom with special emphasis. Did Ice Age humans see them as gods, spirits, or monsters to appease? Or were they simply recording what they saw most vividly, the danger that lived just beyond the firelight? Scientists still argue whether the cave art is symbolic, ritualistic, or simply observational, and perhaps the truth lies in all three. You continue walking across the night plain, and the chorus of predators unfolds around you. Wolves howl, their voices rising and falling in harmony, sending shivers down your spine. A cat snarls in the distance, the sound deep and resonant. Owls call from hidden perches, their cries sharp and sudden. The night is not empty. It is alive with voices, each marking territory, each reminding you that this land belongs to no single creature. It belongs to the balance itself. And yet, amid the fear and the tension, there is also awe. To witness these predators is to witness perfection shaped by survival. Every tooth, every claw, every muscle is tuned to its role. They are as much a part of the steppe as the mammoths, as necessary as the grasses. Without them, the herds would overgraze, the balance would falter. Life is harsh here, but it is also ordered. You pause at the crest of a hill, watching as a hunt begins below. Wolves have finally chosen their moment, surging forward as one. The herd scatters, snow spraying under pounding hooves. For a heartbeat, chaos reigns. Then the wolves converge on a calf, their teamwork as seamless as any human hunt. The mother mammoth trumpets in rage, charging, tusks swinging, but the wolves are quick, darting away with their prize. The night swallows the scene, the balance resets, and silence returns. For the humans who lived through this, the predators must have been both rivals and teachers. From wolves perhaps, they learned the power of cooperation. From lions, patience. From saber-tooths, the strike of precision. And just as humans studied them, the predators must have studied humans in return, recognizing them as strange, dangerous newcomers to the ancient game of survival. You draw your cloak tighter around you, listening as the predators fade back into the night. The firelight in your imagination glows brighter against the dark, and you feel a kinship with those Ice Age humans who must have sat awake, spears in hand, ears tuned to every rustle in the grass. The shadows of predators are always near, yet in their presence, life takes on sharper meaning. And as the stars burn silently overhead, you realize the Ice Age was never simply about ice. It was about life sharpened against life, prey and predator dancing together across the endless steppe. The shadows in the dark were not just danger, they were the other half of the story. The night of predators fades, and with the first pale light of dawn, another truth of the Ice Age reveals itself. No matter how vast the herds, no matter how sharp the predators, survival hinged upon something smaller, something born of spark and flame. As you walk, the air grows colder again, biting with that metallic chill that makes your lungs ache. You draw your cloak tighter, but you feel how fragile your body is against this world. Without fire, you realize you would not last a single night here. And so, you come upon a human camp, tucked into the lee of a hill, where a small flame flickers stubbornly against the wind. This is where the story turns from beasts to people, and how they kept the cold at bay. The fire burns low, its glow soft against the darkness. A man crouches near it, striking flint against pyrite, coaxing sparks into a bundle of dried grass. The sparks catch, smoke curls, and with careful breaths, flame blossoms again. For him, this is not just warmth, it is life itself, drawn from stone, sustained by skill. Fire is more than a tool here, it is a companion, a guardian. Around it families huddle close, their faces painted by light and shadow, their breaths steaming in the cold air. You kneel closer, and you see the ingenuity woven into every detail. Their clothes are not simple hides but carefully stitched garments, sewn with bone needles and sinew threads. Each seam has been tested against the wind, each layer chosen to trap warmth. Their shelters are built from mammoth bones, ribs arched into frames and covered with hides, forming domes that defy the cold. Inside, furs line the floor, and firelight flickers against the curved walls. These homes are not permanent, but they are strong enough to withstand the winter's breath. Mainstream history shows us how advanced these Ice Age people were. They crafted tools of bone and ivory, harpoons with barbs to catch fish, needles to sew garments, scrapers to prepare hides, awls to pierce holes. They shaped flint into blades, sharp enough to cut meat, to carve wood, to defend themselves. Their survival depended not on brute strength, but on cleverness, on a creativity that turned the bones of mammoths into shelters and the sparks of stone into warmth. Scientists still argue about when exactly humans mastered fire, whether it was first kindled by accident, lightning, volcanic eruption, or deliberately struck from stone. By the Ice Age, though, there is no debate. Fire was their inheritance, their weapon against the cold, and more than a weapon, it was a hearth, a place where community gathered. Around it, they told stories, sang songs, and passed down the knowledge of survival. To lose fire was disaster, to carry it was hope. You sit beside the fire now, feeling its warmth seep into your frozen fingers. The flames crackle softly, and the smoke carries a sweet scent of pine resin and burning bone. Children laugh quietly, tossing twigs into the blaze to watch sparks fly upward. Elders murmur, recounting hunts, marking seasons, reminding the young when the herds will return. The fire is both memory and prophecy, a link between past and future. There is a quirkiness, too, in how people of this time blended practicality with imagination. Some fire pits contain strange objects, burned bones arranged carefully, fragments of ochre sprinkled in patterns. Were these rituals, offerings to unseen spirits, or simply the play of creative minds? Scientists still argue. Perhaps both are true. In a world so harsh, perhaps survival required not only tools and skills, but also symbols, beliefs that gave meaning to the struggle, that made endurance more than just existence. The warmth of fire also brought expansion. With flame to cook meat and soften roots, humans could draw more nutrition from food. With light, they could push into caves and carve images upon the walls. With heat, they could live in places once unthinkable, chasing herds into colder lands. Every spark struck from flint widened their world. Imagine the thrill of carrying embers in a clay vessel across frozen plains, knowing that the survival of your people rested in that fragile glow. Fringe stories tell of entire migrations tied to fire. Some suggest that groups may have followed volcanic regions, drawn to natural flames and hot springs. Others imagine that rituals of firelight shaped myths, still alive today, the worship of sun, the reverence of hearth. Whatever the case, fire did more than warm bodies, it illuminated minds. It gave humans time to sit, to plan, to dream. You glance around the camp, and you see evidence of those dreams everywhere. Tools lie neatly arranged, points carefully shaped. A woman works a needle, sewing fur into a hood lined with down. A man carves a figure from ivory, perhaps a talisman, perhaps a gift. Children chase one another through the snow, their laughter mingling with the crackle of fire. For a moment you forget the glaciers, the predators, the endless cold. Here in this circle of light, life feels whole. Yet even in this safety, the cold presses close. The wind howls just beyond the hides. The snow piles high against the walls, and the predator's eyes gleam faintly at the edge of the firelight. Fire is a fragile shield. To keep it alive requires constant vigilance, gathering wood, tending embers, watching sparks. To let it die would mean shivering, hunger, perhaps death. You realize the courage of these people was not only in hunting mammoths or facing wolves, it was also in keeping the flame alive, night after night, season after season, against a world that wanted it extinguished. And as you close your eyes, listening to the hiss of sap in the flames, you realize something deeper. Fire did more than let humans survive the Ice Age. It allowed them to become storytellers. In the glow of flames they imagined, remembered, created. They carried not only sparks but ideas, passing them down like embers to the next generation. Without fire, perhaps no art would have been carved, no myths spoken, no dreams dreamed. The cold outside is vast, unyielding, and eternal. But here inside the circle of firelight, warmth lingers. Humanity's greatest strength was not its muscle or speed, it was this, the ability to gather around a flame, to find safety in one another, to kindle light against the darkness. And as the night deepens once more, you sit with them, watching sparks rise into the sky like stars, and you know in the Ice Age, survival was written in fire. The fire still glows in your memory as you move forward, but now you find yourself stepping into a darker, more mysterious realm. The snow muffles the world above, but beneath the earth there are spaces where firelight flickers against stone, where shadows stretch across walls, and where the imagination of Ice Age humans took shape. You enter a cave, and at once the silence deepens. The air is cool and still, heavy with the scent of earth. The flicker of a torch reveals something unexpected, something extraordinary: paintings. Red ochre, black charcoal, yellow minerals, all glowing softly against the rock. You are not just a wanderer now, you are a witness to the oldest galleries of human memory. On the walls, animals leap to life. Mammoths stride, tusks curving upward. Bison charge, their massive shoulders etched in bold lines. Horses gallop in series, their forms layered as if to capture movement itself. A woolly rhinoceros lowers its horn in defiance. Each figure is precise, alive, drawn with an understanding of shape and motion that surprises you. These people were not merely surviving, they were creating, they were remembering, they were telling stories. Mainstream history confirms the existence of these cave sanctuaries: Lascaux in France, Altamira in Spain, Chauvet with its astonishingly detailed lions and bears. Scientists believe they were painted tens of thousands of years ago, preserved by the cave's stillness. To stand here is to stand in the same place where a human, wrapped in furs, holding a torch, pressed pigment onto rock, and left behind a vision. The fire flickered then, as it flickers now in your hand, shadows dancing across the figures, making them seem to move. You step deeper, and you see handprints. Some are outlines, blown in pigment, like stencils, the human hand placed against the wall and encircled with color. Others are solid, palms pressed into paint and then onto stone. These are not just marks, they are declarations. I was here, they say. We lived, we dreamed, we touched this place. In the glow of firelight, the handprints seem to reach across millennia, grasping yours. Scientists still argue about the purpose of these images. Were they hunting magic, drawn to summon success in the chase? Were they rituals, offerings to unseen powers, prayers whispered into stone? Or were they simply expressions of creativity, the earliest sparks of art for its own sake? The debates continue, unresolved. Perhaps the truth is all of these things. What is certain is that the act of painting in the dark depths of caves required intention, effort, and meaning. These were not idle doodles, but commitments. To paint was to believe that your vision mattered enough to preserve quirky discoveries, deepen the mystery. In some caves, dots and abstract symbols accompany the animals, lines, grids, shapes, repeated again and again. Some researchers suggest they might have been proto-writing, marks that carried information about seasons, migrations, or rituals. Fringe theories whisper that they recorded star maps, linking earthly animals to constellations above. Imagine standing here, with the torchlight flickering, seeing not only bison and lions, but perhaps Orion, Taurus, or the Pleiades encoded in paint. Scientists still debate these interpretations, but the possibility lingers like an ember of wonder. You turn a corner and find a figurine on the ground. It is small, carved from ivory, a figure of a woman with rounded curves, exaggerated hips, and a full belly. The so-called Venus figurines, scattered across Ice Age Europe and Asia, carry an aura of mystery. Were they symbols of fertility, of life in a harsh world? Were they personal charms, carried for protection, or were they art, pure and simple? Whatever their purpose, they speak of a humanity that valued more than survival. These people carried imagination in their hands. You imagine sitting in the cave with them. The torch sputters, smoke curling against the ceiling. A group gathers, children wide-eyed as an elder gestures to the painted walls, telling a story of the hunt, of the spirits of the animals, of the bond between human and beast. The paintings glow, alive in the shifting light. The stories are not written, but they are remembered, passed from voice to voice. To listen is to become part of the story, to carry it forward into the future. Mainstream archaeology points to another truth. the act of gathering in caves, was itself a sign of community. These places were not homes but sanctuaries, special spaces set apart for meaning. To walk into them was to step outside the ordinary and into the sacred. Perhaps the darkness was part of the magic, removing the distractions of the step and focusing attention on flickering visions. You look up at the ceiling and see a bison painted upside down. Why? Scientists still argue. Was it wounded? Was it meant to represent the turning of seasons, the inversion of fortune? The questions linger unanswered, but in their very mystery lies the beauty of these places. The Ice Age people left us images, but not explanations. They trusted the walls to carry their stories, even if the words would be lost. Quirky tales from folklore add another layer. In some traditions, caves were seen as entrances to other worlds, passages to the spirits of animals, ancestors, or gods. When Ice Age people painted deep underground, perhaps they believed they were closer to these hidden realms. The walls were not just surfaces but thresholds, thin places where the human and the divine touched. Whether you believe this or not, standing here in the flickering light, you feel it. The air is heavy with presence, as though the paintings themselves are watching you. The torch sputters again, and shadows ripple across the painted walls. For a moment the animals move, the bison charge, the horses gallop, the lions stalk. You realize that this was part of the design. By painting in layers, by choosing certain contours of the stone, the artists made the animals come alive when firelight danced. Art and flame worked together, creating motion, creating magic. You close your eyes, hearing the whispers of those who once knelt here, their voices low, their hands stained with ochre. They are gone, their bones long returned to the earth, but their visions endure. You stand in their gallery, breathing the same air, hearing the same silence, watching the same firelight move across the same walls. The connection stretches across tens of thousands of years, unbroken, as if the Ice Age itself still lingers in this cave. And as you step back into the cold night, the stars above feel brighter, sharper, almost like the paintings come alive in the sky. You realize that the Ice Age was not just a time of survival, it was a time of creation, of imagination, of humanity reaching beyond hunger and cold to leave a mark that endures. Here in painted caves and carved figurines, the Ice Age speaks not with ice or bone, but with art, and in that art, you glimpse the soul of the people who walked this frozen world before you. You emerge from the painted caves, carrying the warmth of firelight and the glow of ochre in your mind. But outside, the air bites sharp once again, and the world reminds you that even art cannot soften the restless nature of climate. The Ice Age was never still. Though glaciers seemed eternal, though herds appeared endless, the planet pulsed with sudden shifts, unpredictable as a storm. You walk across the plain and feel the ground trembling, not from mammoth herds this time, but from forces deeper, wilder, harder to tame. This is a world caught in flux. Picture a frozen lake, miles across, held back by nothing more than a wall of ice. For centuries, meltwater from glaciers collects here, pressing against its frozen dam. One day, the pressure becomes too great. The ice shatters like glass, and a flood roars free. Walls of water taller than towers surge across the land, tearing forests from the ground, carving canyons in days that would take rivers thousands of years to shape. This was the fate of parts of North America when massive proglacial lakes burst, creating the scablands of Washington state. To stand there in that moment would have been to witness the land itself convulsing, rivers of ice giving way to rivers of water. Mainstream history tells us these outburst floods shaped not only the land but also human imagination. To live through such a torrent, to watch entire valleys vanish beneath churning water, would leave scars deeper than stone. Some scholars suggest that later myths of great floods, echoes of stories told and retold, may have roots in these Ice Age disasters. But floods were only one expression of flux. Far away, volcanoes rumbled beneath the weight of ice. When they erupted, ash blanketed the sky, cooling the earth in sudden, brutal winters. Imagine the sun dimmed to a pale disk, its warmth cut off by veils of ash. The world grows colder still, crops wither, animals struggle, and humans huddle closer to their fires. Some eruptions may have reshaped climates for centuries, their fingerprints still visible in the layers of ice cores. Scientists still argue about which forces mattered most, the orbital rhythms that guided the glaciers, or these sudden catastrophes, volcanoes, floods, shifts in ocean currents, that jolted the climate into chaos. Perhaps both worked together, steady pulses interrupted by shocks. What is certain is that the Ice Age was not uniform. It was a patchwork of extremes, sudden swings and abrupt endings. You walk across the plain and feel the wind rise. Dust swirls again, carried high into the sky. Some of it settles slowly, layer upon layer, while some remain suspended, scattering light, cooling the world. The atmosphere itself was different then, its composition shifting with the rise and fall of carbon dioxide. Scientists reading ice cores can see these shifts in sharp lines, like the jagged rhythm of a heartbeat. What they reveal is unsettling. The planet's climate can change far faster than once imagined. The quirky details of this flux show themselves in the strangest places. In Greenland, for example, cores of ice reveal sudden warmings, jumps of several degrees within mere decades. For people living through them, winters may have shortened abruptly, summers lengthened, forests creeping into former grasslands within a single lifetime. Imagine being born into a world of endless snow, only to see it soften into rivers and trees before you grew old. Scientists still debate how these abrupt changes occurred. Did the oceans shift currents? Did winds reorganize? Did feedback loops of ice and sunlight accelerate the swing? The questions remain open, lingering like whispers in the ice. As you walk, you notice signs of these shifts everywhere. A valley once full of grass now sprouts shrubs. A forest lingers at the edge of the steppe, its trees thin but persistent, daring to reclaim space. Animals adjust as best they can. Mammoths wander farther in search of food. Reindeer shift their migrations. Predators follow, restless, adapting to new prey and new grounds. Humans, too, must adjust, learning new routes, finding new shelters, discovering new plants to gather. Life is forced to move, always moving, in answer to the changing breath of the world. You stop at the edge of a dried riverbed, its floor cracked and bare. Once torrents of meltwater surged here, but now the flow has shifted elsewhere. You pick up a stone and see its surface polished smooth, carried by rushing waters and left behind when the flood ended. This is the mark of flux. Nothing holds steady, not rivers, not skies, not even mountains. The Ice Age was a master of change, reshaping its stage again and again, forcing every actor, beast, plant or human to improvise. Fringe theories sometimes suggest that even cosmic events played a role. Some propose that impacts of comets or asteroids triggered sudden cooling or melting, their dust clouds altering the climate. Though evidence remains contested, the allure of such explanations lingers. Scientists still argue whether strange layers in sediments, rich in platinum or other anomalies, are signs of cosmic intrusions or simply quirks of earthly processes. The debate reminds you of the fragility of certainty. Even in the world of science, mystery persists, just as it did for those who once lived through the storms themselves. As night begins to fall, you watch the stars brighten overhead. You imagine Ice Age humans staring at those same stars, seeking patterns, stories, perhaps omens of change. Did they notice the sudden shifts? Did they tell stories of spirits angered, or skies torn open? Did they huddle in caves and whisper of floods, or watch volcanoes flare in awe and fear? Their voices are lost, but the earth remembers, and in its soil and ice it carries the traces of every storm, every eruption, every breath of dust. You sit on a rock, feeling the cold seep into your bones, and reflect on the paradox of it all. The Ice Age feels eternal when you imagine glaciers stretching for thousands of miles. Yet within that eternity were moments of shocking speed, shifts that turned ecosystems upside down in a heartbeat. The planet is patient, but also sudden. It waits, then it leaps. And so as the wind settles and the stars burn brighter, you realize that this world was not frozen in stillness. It was alive with change, violent, surprising, transformative. The mammoth steppe, the painted caves, the frozen seas, all were shaped not only by the slow rhythm of ice, but by the sudden lurches of a restless earth. You wake beneath a pale dawn, and the world feels subtly different. The horizon, once endless with grass and dust, now bears darker patches, clusters of shrubs and scattered trees pushing their way into the open steppe. The air, though still cold, has softened, the bite less harsh, the winds less constant. You sense it before you can name it. The warming breath has begun. The ice age, though mighty, is loosening its grip. The glaciers no longer advance so ruthlessly. Instead, they begin to falter, retreating inch by inch, releasing their hold upon the land. At first, the change is almost imperceptible. A patch of ground stays bare of snow longer into the spring. A river runs a little higher, its waters clouded with silt from newly melting ice. Summers stretch just slightly longer, giving shrubs and trees enough time to seed and spread. Where once the mammoth steppe reigned without rival, forests begin to creep forward. Birch and pine root themselves on the edges, their leaves rustling faintly in the breeze. What was once endless horizon now grows thicker, closer, more shadowed. For the herds this change is both gift and challenge. Reindeer find shelter among the trees, but mammoths, once masters of the open plains, struggle as their grazing lands shrink. The grasses that fed millions give way to forests that cannot sustain the same abundance. You picture a mammoth calf wandering among the pines, confused by the lack of wide plains, its family forced to wander farther for food. The musk oxen retreat northward, following the cold. The bison press into new valleys. The great steppe, once boundless, is breaking apart. Mainstream history marks this retreat of the ice as the great turning point. Around 12,000 years ago, glaciers began withdrawing for good, giving way to the warmer, more stable climate you live in today. Lakes swelled, rivers shifted, coastlines transformed. Human populations, once scattered and small, found new opportunities in the expanding forests and fertile valleys. Yet the transition was not smooth. It was jagged, uneven, marked by fits of warming and sudden reversals. Scientists still argue over the causes of these swings. Were they triggered by ocean currents shifting, by bursts of meltwater disrupting circulation, or by feedback loops in Earth's complex systems? The debates continue, but the evidence in ice cores is clear. The warming breath came in waves, not in a steady sigh. Quirky evidence of this change lingers in curious places. In melting permafrost, pollen grains are found, tiny specks that reveal which plants were thriving at which times. Layers of soil tell stories of forests advancing, retreating, advancing again. In lakes, the remains of insects record the changing seasons, the spread of beetles that preferred warmth, the decline of those adapted to cold. Even the bones of animals preserve the transition. Mammoths found in later layers are smaller, leaner, perhaps struggling against dwindling resources. Some show signs of malnutrition, their teeth worn from chewing on tougher, woody plants rather than soft grasses. As you walk, you notice the difference in sound. The plain is quieter, the herds are fewer, their thundering hooves less constant. Instead, you hear birdsong, a chorus of warblers and thrushes nesting in the spreading forests. The air smells different too, tinged with resin, richer with soil. The mammoth steppe is giving way to a patchwork of new worlds, tundra here, forest there, wetlands in between. The mosaic grows more complex, more familiar to your modern eyes, yet less hospitable to the giants of the Ice Age. Scientists still argue whether humans or climate struck the harder blow to these creatures. Did the warming breath doom them by reshaping their ecosystems, or did human hunters tip the balance, pressing herds already weakened by shrinking grasslands? Perhaps it was both, a double weight the giants could not bear. In truth, their decline mirrors the transformation of the earth itself, slow, uneven, inevitable. You pause at the edge of a forest, looking back at the open plain. The grassland stretches still, but you can see its limits. It is shrinking, swallowed inch by green. A mammoth herd passes through, their massive bodies brushing against trees, breaking branches, pushing through undergrowth. They do not belong here, yet they adapt as best they can. Calves trumpet, adults rumble low, but their movements seem less certain, their paths less well worn. This is not the world they were made for. Quirky fringe stories whisper that perhaps some of these giants sought refuge in hidden pockets of the world, valleys where grass lingered, isolated plains spared from the spread of forest. Legends in remote cultures sometimes speak of beasts larger than elephants, hairy and strange, seen long after the Ice Age ended. Scientists still argue whether these tales are echoes of memory or simple imagination, but the possibility lingers that for a while, the warming breath left small corners of the mammoth steppe alive. For humans, the change brought both risk and opportunity. Hunters who once relied on mammoths and bison shifted their diets, turning more toward fish, deer, smaller game, and gathered plants. Tools adapted, settlements grew, experiments with planting and farming began. The warmth brought new choices, and from those choices the seeds of civilization. Yet you can imagine the disorientation of those first generations. Their grandparents had hunted mammoths across endless grasslands. They now raised children in forests, telling stories of a world already slipping into myth. You sit beneath a birch tree, its bark pale and peeling, its leaves trembling in the wind. The sound is gentle, soothing, but you feel the weight of change pressing through it. The Ice Age is ending, but endings are not simple. They carry with them loss as well as promise. The warming breath brings life back to forests, yet it also unravels the great steppe, scattering its giants into memory. As twilight falls, you look up and see the stars pricking the darkening sky. They are unchanged, eternal in their patterns, but the world beneath them shifts, reshapes, renews. The glaciers retreat, the forests advance, the steppe fades, and in that shift lies both sorrow and hope, a reminder that nothing, not even ice, not even giants, lasts forever. The warming breath is the beginning of your world and the end of theirs. You linger in the hush of twilight, listening as the forest around you settles into the rhythm of a new world. The warming breath has spread farther, loosening the glaciers, swelling rivers, softening the land. But while trees root themselves and birdsong grows stronger, something else is happening in the shadows. The great Ice Age beasts are faltering. This is the age of extinctions, the moment when titans bow to time. You step onto a wide floodplain, the soil damp with meltwater, and in the distance you see them, mammoths, bison, giant deer. They still wander, still breathe, still live, but their herds are thinner, their movements restless. The steppe that once fed them is fragmented, their food harder to find. Mammoths scrape bark from birch trees, stripping them bare. Reindeer graze patches of moss where snow has melted. A giant deer lifts its massive antlers, spanning wider than your outstretched arms, and for a moment you marvel at its size, its beauty, its impossibility, yet its ribs show faintly through its hide, a silent sign of scarcity. Mainstream history places this time around 12,000 years ago. One by one, the megafauna begin to vanish. The woolly mammoth, the saber-toothed cat, the giant ground sloth, the mastodon, the glyptodon, all once rulers of their realms, now slipping into extinction. The reasons remain tangled. Scientists still argue whether climate alone caused their downfall, or whether human hunters, newly skilled and expanding in number, struck the final blow. Likely it was both: ecosystems strained by warming, herds weakened by hunger, and people pressing into their ranges with spears and fire. You picture a hunt on the edge of this floodplain. A small band of humans moves quietly, their spears tipped with flint points, their eyes trained on a mammoth cow. She is older, slower, separated slightly from the herd. The hunters advance with practiced coordination, flanking her, driving her towards soft ground where her footing falters. Their shouts rise, spears fly, and with immense courage and peril, the beast finally falls. For the hunters, it is triumph: meat, hide, bone enough to sustain their group for weeks. For the mammoth, it is the end of a line stretching back millions of years. Quirky traces of this transition endure in surprising places. On Wrangel Island, north of Siberia, small populations of mammoths survived long after their kin disappeared, shrunken in size, isolated in their icy refuge. For thousands of years, they lived on, ghosts of a vanished world, until about 4,000 years ago, when even they finally vanished. Imagine that pyramids rising in Egypt, while mammoths still walked a lonely island in the Arctic. The overlap makes extinction feel less distant, more hauntingly near. You continue walking, and you find the bones, scattered across the land. Ivory tusks jut from the soil, ribs half buried in silt, skulls weathering under the open sky. The earth seems littered with remnants, as if reluctant to let its giants vanish entirely. In caves too, bones lie stacked, remains of lions, bears, wolves, creatures who lived and hunted alongside humans. You kneel beside one, brushing the dirt from its surface, and feel the silence pressing in. These were not mythical monsters, they were real, and they are gone. Scientists still argue whether humans truly hunted them to extinction. Some say the numbers were too great, the herds too vast for human hunters to erase. Others point to precise evidence, stone points lodged in bones, patterns of kill sites, population models showing how a few centuries of pressure could tip the scales. The debate is unresolved, but perhaps that is fitting. Extinction is rarely the work of one force alone. It is a tapestry of change, woven from hunger, climate, predation, and chance. Fringe whispers suggest other possibilities. Some claim diseases may have swept through populations, invisible killers, leaving little trace in the fossil record. Others speculate about cosmic events, comets or impacts that darkened skies, weakened ecosystems, hastened decline. Scientists dismiss many of these as unlikely, yet the persistence of such theories reveals how deeply we seek to explain the loss of these giants, how reluctant we are to accept that they simply slipped away. You stand in the middle of a meadow, the last light of day painting the sky, orange and violet. For a moment you imagine it full of mammoths again, tusks shining in the sun, calves trumpeting, herds stretching to the horizon. You blink, and the vision fades. The meadow is empty, save for the whisper of grass in the wind. The absence is almost louder than their presence. For humans, these extinctions marked a turning point. The great hunts became rarer, the bones of mammoths harder to find, the herds less reliable. People adapted, turning more towards smaller game, fish, plants. In some places they began experimenting with the cultivation of wild grains, perhaps out of necessity, perhaps out of curiosity. The decline of megafauna coincided with the rise of new ways of living, settlements, farming, the slow march towards civilization. One world ended as another began. You sit on a boulder, staring at the twilight sky. The first stars appear, unchanging, eternal, while below, the earth shifts, loses, renews. You think of those who lived through this, who watched mammoths fade from the horizon, and saber-tooths vanish from the shadows. Did they know what they were witnessing? Did they sense the end of an age? Or did the losses blend into the flow of time, unnoticed until memory turned them into myth? The night deepens, and the meadow grows quiet. The herds are gone, the predators silenced, the bones scattered like broken statues, and yet, in your imagination, their presence lingers. The earth itself remembers them, in fossils, in soil, in whispers of DNA. Though extinction has claimed their bodies, their memory endures, etched into both land and story. This is the age of extinctions, when giants bowed and fell, and humanity stepped forward into a world forever changed. The meadow fades behind you, and in its place the world grows colder again. You feel the bite of Arctic winds, hear the crunch of snow beneath your boots, and see the endless horizon of ice and sea. Far in the north, beyond the great continent of Siberia, lies a lonely refuge, a place where time held its breath just a little longer. Wrangel Island. Here the mammoth story lingered past its ending, echoing faintly even as the rest of the world forgot. You walk along the island's shore, the sea lapping cold and dark against stones. The land is rugged, dotted with tundra plants, mosses and hardy willows that never rise taller than your knees. The silence is immense, broken only by the call of seabirds and the distant crash of ice floes. Yet once, not so long ago, this island carried the heavy footsteps of woolly mammoths. Not the towering herds of the mainland, but smaller, isolated groups, survivors stranded by rising seas. Mainstream history places their survival here until about 4,000 years ago, meaning they lived while humans were building the pyramids of Giza. Imagine that parallel, mammoths trudging across Wrangel's tundra while stones were being stacked into monuments on the Nile. The world often feels separated by ages, yet here time braided two eras together. Mammoths were not creatures of distant prehistory alone. They walked the earth during the dawn of civilization, but they were not the same mammoths that once thundered across the steppes. Isolated from the great mainland herds, these Wrangel survivors shrank in size, a phenomenon scientists call insular dwarfism. The mammoths here stood smaller, tusks more delicate, their population numbering only a few hundred at most. In their isolation, they became both fragile and precious, a last whisper of an age already fading. You walk farther inland and you see their traces, scattered bones lying pale against the tundra, a tusk half buried in permafrost, prints in the soil, preserved by chance, ghostly reminders of heavy feet. The island feels haunted, though not by malice, haunted instead by memory. Every gust of wind carries the weight of absence, as though the land itself remembers the creatures that once defined it. Scientists still argue about why these last mammoths died out. Some suggest climate again played its hand, altering plants and water supplies, stressing a fragile population. Others point to humans, perhaps seafarers reached the island, hunting, disturbing, or introducing new pressures. Still others examine the mammoths themselves, finding hints of genetic decline. Inbreeding may have weakened them, causing deformities, reducing fertility, unraveling their line from within. The truth may be a combination of all these, a small population made vulnerable by isolation, extinguished by the smallest push. Quirky details of their DNA reveal a strange story. Researchers analyzing preserved rangeal mammoth genomes discovered peculiar mutations, genes affecting smell, coat color, even urinary function. Some speculate that these odd changes may have impaired their survival, evidence of what happens when a population becomes too small. The last mammoths, it seems, may have carried a burden of fragility written in their very code. It is a reminder that survival requires not just endurance but diversity, resilience, and luck. You kneel beside a tusk, running your hand across its curve, and you feel both awe and sadness. To think that creatures of such grandeur survived into such recent times, only to vanish unseen, their final trumpet lost to the winds. Did they die quietly, without witness, their bones left to bleach in silence? Or did humans meet them here, gaze upon them in wonder, and carry away stories of hairy elephants on a lonely island in the north? Scientists still debate whether any human ever set eyes on Rangel's last herds. Fringe theories add their own shadows. Some storytellers imagine that small groups of mammoths survived even later, hidden in Siberian valleys or Arctic islands, their presence inspiring legends among indigenous peoples. Reports of giant hairy beasts linger in folklore, whispered as if the past never fully ended. Though most scientists doubt their survival, the allure of such tales endures because we do not easily let go of the giants. As night falls over Rangel Island, you stand on a rise overlooking the sea. The waves crash steadily, the air tastes of salt and ice, and the sky glows faintly with northern lights, green and purple veils rippling across the stars. You close your eyes and you imagine them, small herds moving slowly across the tundra, calves trailing behind their mothers, tusks gleaming in moonlight. You hear their low rumbles, their trumpets echoing off the cliffs. For a moment they live again, alive in your senses, in your imagination. But when you open your eyes, the land is empty. No mammoths graze here now, only bones, only silence, only memory. The last echo has faded, leaving the island quiet. And yet that silence itself is a monument, a reminder that even titans can vanish, that survival is never guaranteed, that the line between existence and extinction is fragile and thin. The thought settles over you like the northern night. Extinction is not only an ending, it is also a mirror. In the fading of mammoths, you glimpse the fragility of life itself. The earth can sustain giants for millions of years, only to sweep them away in an instant. The world moves on, reshaping itself without pause, indifferent to who lingers and who disappears. And yet, by remembering them, by tracing their bones, their DNA, their stories, you carry them forward. Their echo does not vanish entirely. It hums still, faintly, like the low rumble of a mammoth in the distance, reminding you that the past is never fully gone. You walk back toward the shore, the northern lights shimmering above, the sea stretching into darkness. Rangel Island grows smaller in your vision, a lonely refuge that once carried the weight of giants. Its silence follows you, whispering softly, they lived, they walked, they fell, and for a time they lingered here, holding back the end. You leave the lonely tundra of Rangel Island behind, and the scene shifts once more. The air is loud now, filled with the thunder of water, the groan of ice, the roar of rivers too vast to comprehend. The glaciers are melting, and their retreat does not pass quietly. They release their burden in torrents, rivers born of ice. You find yourself standing at the edge of a vast rushing flow. The water is not clear but cloudy, churning with silt ground from mountains, its surface littered with chunks of ice carved from the retreating glaciers. The sound is deafening, as though the earth itself is speaking through flood. These meltwater rivers carve their way across the land, shaping valleys, splitting rock, sweeping everything before them. Mainstream history tells of the power of these rivers. In North America, as glaciers retreated, immense lakes formed along their margins, held back by frozen dams. When those dams failed, the water surged forward in cataclysmic floods. The Missoula floods, for instance, unleashed volumes of water that dwarfed the Amazon, scouring the landscape of Washington and Oregon, leaving behind the scablands, a terrain of carved channels, exposed basalt, and giant ripple marks still visible today. Imagine standing on the plain as such a flood arrives, a wall of water taller than trees, faster than a galloping horse, tearing soil, stone and forest alike. Few things in nature match the violence of ice-borne rivers. You walk along one of these ancient channels, its cliffs towering above, the ground etched by swirls where eddies once spun. In the silence, you can still hear the roar that shaped it, the memory of water engraved in stone. These rivers were sculptors of continents. They carried boulders the size of houses, dropped them far from their origins, left behind erratics that puzzle you as you stumble across them. Each misplaced stone is a message from the floodwaters. I was carried, I was left here when the torrent passed. Scientists still argue about the timing and frequency of these floods. Some suggest a single cataclysmic event reshaped whole regions, while others see evidence of multiple surges, each one powerful, each one rewriting the land. The debate continues, unresolved, yet the evidence of immense forces remains undeniable. In Europe too, rivers of ice carved valleys that now cradle famous waterways, the Rhine, the Thames, the Seine, meltwater-filled basins to form lakes, sculpted passes that became trade routes in later ages. Even the Great Lakes of North America were born of glaciers, gouged by ice and filled with meltwater, their surfaces still shimmering reminders of that age. To sit by the shore of Lake Superior today is to rest beside a monument carved by ice, filled by its tears. You wander farther, and you find quirky details left by the floods. Giant ripples frozen in stone, as if the land itself became a riverbed. Dry waterfalls where torrents once plunged. Caverns where water swirled with the strength of whirlpools. The scale is so vast that your mind struggles to comprehend it, yet here it is, silent, waiting. Fringe whispers suggest that memories of these floods may have echoed into human myth. Some link them to tales of deluge, stories of great waters swallowing the land, of worlds ending in flood. Scientists still argue whether cultural memory can stretch so far, whether Ice Age people truly witnessed floods that seeded legends carried millennia forward. The connection is uncertain, but it lingers, tempting you to imagine mammoth hunters watching rivers rise and carrying their awe into story. You pause by a valley where a river runs today, quiet compared to its past self. Willows line its banks, fish swim in its depths, birds dip into its waters. Yet beneath this calm lies a history of chaos. The shape of the valley, the placement of the boulders, the soil itself, all bear the mark of floods. It is a reminder that even the gentlest stream can be the descendant of catastrophe. You sit on a stone smoothed by ancient waters, and you think about the paradox of rivers. Born of destruction, they give life. Carving violently, they leave behind fertile plains where forests grow, where humans later plant fields. The floods that once terrified and scoured became the foundations of stability. Without the glaciers, without their meltwater, the landscapes you know would not exist. Scientists reading sediments trace these rivers in layers of silt. They find pollen carried downstream, bones swept along, even fragments of charcoal from fires quenched in flood. Each layer is a page, each page a story of water unleashed. The rivers were not simply pathways of destruction, they were record keepers, carrying the memory of entire worlds. The quirky thought arises, perhaps rivers remember better than humans. While stories fade, rivers preserve. They write themselves into stone, carving letters no storm can erase. You trace your hand along a ripple in rock, a remnant of water's handwriting, and feel connected to that memory. As night falls, the floodplain around you grows quiet. The rivers once roaring are now frozen in their silence, their work done. The stars appear above, reflected in pools left behind, and for a moment you imagine them as droplets of another kind of river, a celestial flood spilling across the sky. The symmetry comforts you above and below, water and light, memory and flow. You close your eyes and listen. Though the river is gone, you can still hear it if you pay attention. The echo of ice cracking, water rushing, continents shifting. It is the sound of creation, violent yet essential, the pulse of a planet remaking itself. The rivers born of ice may have ended their fury, but their legacy runs beneath every step you take, every valley you cross, every lake you gaze upon. They shaped the map of the world you know, and even now their memory flows quietly, waiting for you to hear. The rivers quiet behind you, their thunder fading into memory, and once more you walk into the softer traces of the Ice Age. Not all its legacies are carved in stone or left in towering valleys. Some are smaller, humbler, hidden beneath your feet. These are the soils, the sediments, the frozen archives of permafrost, silent diaries of vanished worlds. You kneel and scoop a handful of earth, and you realize you are holding fragments of an age gone by, written in dust, pollen, and frozen flesh. Beneath the wind-blown plains of Eurasia and North America lie vast layers of loess, fine dust, lifted by Ice Age winds and dropped in thick blankets. This loess soil is pale, almost yellow, soft to the touch. In its time, it carried life. Grasses rooted in it. Herds fed on those grasses, predators followed the herds, and humans followed them all. Today, in places like China and Ukraine, loess soils remain some of the most fertile on Earth, feeding millions. It is a quirky inheritance. Storms of Ice Age dust, once choking and relentless, gave rise to future breadbaskets. But soil holds more than fertility, it holds memory. You walk across a loess plain and imagine peeling back its layers like pages in a book. Each layer carries pollen grains, fragile but durable, whispering which plants grew in which era. In cold spells, the pollen tells of tundra and steppe. In warmer pulses, it records birch, pine, oak. These tiny grains are time capsules, telling stories humans never wrote. Farther north, in Siberia and Alaska, the soil deepens into permafrost, frozen ground stretching hundreds of meters deep. This is no ordinary Earth. It is a vault of Ice Age relics. Preserved in its cold grip are the bodies of mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, even foals and wolves. Their flesh, fur, even stomach contents remain intact, as if they simply lay down to sleep. You walk into a shallow ravine where the permafrost has melted back, and there in the wall of ice-rich soil, a mammoth's tusk gleams pale. It feels uncanny to stand so near to something both impossibly ancient and startlingly immediate. Mainstream history recounts how discoveries like these gave scientists their clearest glimpses into Ice Age life. A foal, preserved so well its mane still clung to its neck. A wolf pup, golden fur gleaming after tens of thousands of years. A bison with grass still in its stomach. You shiver at the intimacy of such finds, the last meal, the last breath, frozen in place, waiting for you to read them. Quirky details add to the wonder. In some mammoths, scientists found buttercups preserved in their mouths, as if they had been grazing peacefully moments before death. In others, parasites remain in their guts, revealing the invisible struggles of their lives. Even bacteria and viruses linger, sealed away in ice, sparking debates about whether thawing permafrost might release ancient pathogens. Scientists still argue how real the risk is, but the thought carries a chill of its own. You kneel in the soil and imagine how each frozen layer is like a memory not yet forgotten. Permafrost is more than a graveyard, it is an archive. Within it lie seeds, DNA, spores, remnants of ecosystems that once thrived. Some seeds, when thawed, have even been coaxed back to life. Imagine holding in your palm a plant reborn after 30,000 years asleep. The boundary between past and present blurs, and you feel as though the Ice Age breathes again through the soil. But the soil is not only about what it preserves, it is also about what it shapes. Loess and permafrost determined how humans lived. On fertile Loess plains, people found abundant food, both in herds and in plants. In permafrost regions, they found bones and tusks strong enough to build shelters, carve tools, even fashion delicate beads and figurines. The land beneath their feet was both provider and recorder. Scientists still argue about how much these soils influenced migration routes, how much they determined where humans thrived and where they struggled. Did the fertile plains draw them in, encouraging settlement? Did permafrost barriers hold them back? The evidence remains incomplete, scattered, like fragments of pollen waiting to be pieced together. But the debate reminds you that even the smallest particles, dust, grains, seeds, can steer the course of history. Fringe whispers stretch the soil's story even farther. Some speculate that deep in permafrost, unknown species might lie preserved, never yet unearthed. Others wonder if cloning a mammoth from such remains could one day bring the giants back. The idea hovers between science and dream, between possibility and impossibility. For now, mammoth bones remain silent, their DNA fragile, their echo unrevived, but still the soil tempts us with its quiet promise. There is more beneath than we yet know. You rise and walk across the Loess plain, the evening wind picking up dust that stings your cheeks. The air smells faintly of earth, a smell older than memory. You imagine the storms that once raged here, carrying billions of grains across continents, depositing them layer upon layer, building soils thicker than houses. Those storms must have darkened skies, choked lungs, challenged survival, and yet without them, much of today's farmland would not exist. Even chaos can leave gifts behind. As twilight deepens, you kneel once more, scooping another handful of soil. The grains slip through your fingers, soft, unremarkable, and yet each one carries a story older than time. Pollen, seeds, DNA, dust, they whisper of forests and steppes, of mammoths grazing, of hunters moving camp, of floods surging past. You realize the ground is not just where you walk, it is where memory sleeps. The stars brighten overhead, and you imagine the soil reflecting them in its own quiet way. Just as the night sky holds the light of ancient suns, the earth beneath you holds the life of ancient worlds. Both are archives, both are infinite, both are waiting for you to notice. You close your eyes and listen, and though the soil is silent, you feel its stories in your bones. The ice age is not gone. It lingers beneath your feet, in every grain of dust, in every frozen root, in every whisper of memory, preserved by earth itself. The dust of Loess fades behind you, and your path leads onward into a world more familiar, yet still shaped by the Ice Age's lingering hand. You walk across farmland, past rivers, through quiet towns, and beneath your every step lies a legacy older than human memory. The glaciers are gone, the mammoths are gone, but their fingerprints remain, etched into the very landscapes of today. What you see, the fields, the coasts, the climate you take for granted, all attuned to rhythms set during the last great glaciation. You begin in the low-rolling fields of Central Europe. The soil here is dark, rich, and endlessly fertile. Wheat and barley sway in the breeze, their roots digging deep into Loess plains left behind by Ice Age winds. Without the storms that carried fine particles across the continent, these fields might be barren. Instead, they feed millions. You crouch down and press your palm into the soil. It is soft, crumbly, alive. Every loaf of bread, every field of grain, owes something to Ice Age dust. Farther north you find coastlines, strange ones, irregular, scarred. The sea was once much lower, locked up in the glaciers, and humans walked on lands now drowned. When the ice melted, seas surged, swallowing plains, reshaping shores. Doggerland, once a vast plain connecting Britain to Europe, now lies beneath the North Sea. Imagine hunters standing where the waves now roll, watching herds move across wide valleys, unaware that their land would vanish beneath water. Today, fishermen still dredge up mammoth bones from the seafloor, reminders of a world lost. In Asia, you trace the legacy of Beringia, the land bridge that once joined Siberia and Alaska. During the Ice Age, lowered seas exposed a grassy steppe where mammoths roamed and humans crossed into the Americas. The bridge is gone, drowned by rising seas, but the echoes remain in the DNA of people across 2 continents. The coastlines you know, the distribution of cultures, the paths of migration, all carry the imprint of an Ice Age sea. Mainstream history makes it clear, the modern map of Earth is not ancient, but recent. The retreat of glaciers redrew the world, carving the Great Lakes of North America, gouging fjords into Norway, flattening plains in Canada. Even the hills and valleys you may drive across each day are shaped by the ice, moraines, piled by retreating glaciers, drumlins formed under their crushing weight, kettle lakes, left by melting blocks of ice. To walk the modern landscape is to walk a gallery of glacial sculptures. Scientists still argue about how stable these legacies are. The climate of the last 10,000 years has been unusually calm compared to the chaos of the Ice Age. Some call it the Holocene climate cradle, a period of stability that allowed farming, cities and civilization to flourish. But they wonder, are we simply in a pause between extremes? Will ice return again, reshaping fields and coasts once more? You climb a low ridge, and the view opens before you. A patchwork of forests, rivers and farmland stretches to the horizon. It looks eternal, but you know it is not. Every tree root here depends on soils laid by ancient winds. Every river follows paths cut by ice. Even the climate, the rains, the warmth, the rhythm of the seasons, arose from the patterns set when glaciers retreated. The Ice Age is not gone. It breathes in the present. Quirky details abound. In Germany, a cathedral stands on stone quarried from glacial erratics, boulders dropped by ice long before humans built. In North America, whole towns are perched on eskers, sinuous ridges of gravel once deposited by meltwater streams flowing within glaciers. Children play on drumlins without knowing they are relics of flowing ice. Your daily world, familiar and ordinary, is a museum without walls. Fringe whispers stretch the legacy even further. Some say that human psychology itself is shaped by the Ice Age, that our fears of darkness, our reverence for fire, our patterns of migration and storytelling, all were forged when glaciers ruled. Scientists still argue how much of that is true, but it is hard to deny the allure. Perhaps when you dream of survival, of warmth, of hunting, of wandering, you are echoing instincts honed during frozen nights. You wander down into a valley where a river meanders lazily, its surface sparkling in the afternoon light. The valley walls are smooth, U-shaped, carved by a glacier's long retreat. Cows graze on the slopes now, and cottages cluster near the water. The scene is pastoral, calm, timeless. Yet in your mind's eye, you overlay the glacier, white, towering, grinding its way forward. The contrast is startling, the violence of creation, the gentleness of what follows. Scientists study these valleys and soils, not just for their history but for their warnings. Permafrost, once thought eternal, now thaws, releasing ancient carbon, threatening new feedback loops. Loess plains, while fertile, are fragile, eroding quickly if abused. The legacies of the Ice Age are gifts, but they are also responsibilities. To understand them is to see both the foundation of our world and its vulnerabilities. As twilight falls, you sit at the edge of a field. Fireflies blink softly, the night smells of grass and earth, and far off you hear the lowing of cattle. It feels safe, ordinary, but you know this safety is built upon the bones of glaciers, the dust of storms, the floods of meltwater. You live in the aftermath of catastrophe, shaped and sustained by it. The stars emerge overhead, and you think of how the Ice Age sculpted even the sky you see. Air currents altered by glaciers carried dust into the upper atmosphere, changing sunsets, scattering starlight. The very colors of twilight may once have been different, painted by ice. You gaze upward, and for a moment, the present dissolves into the past. You whisper to yourself, the Ice Age is not behind you, it is beneath you, around you, within you. Its rhythms echo in the soil, in the coasts, in the very stability of the climate. You are its heir, living in a world still humming with its memory. The valley grows darker, the fireflies drifting into the night, and you step onward into stillness. Around you lies the world as it is today, forests rising, rivers winding, cities pulsing with light. Yet beneath all this present bustle, a whisper lingers, faint but steady, the memory of the Ice Age. You feel it in the soil, see it in the shapes of the land, hear it in the hush of the night. The age of ice may be gone, but its story is not finished. It flows through you even now. You pause on a hilltop, looking across a landscape, both ordinary and miraculous. A farmer's field stretches below, bounded by hedgerows, and beyond it a town glimmers with yellow lights. Roads curve, rivers shimmer, hills roll softly into the distance. To an unknowing eye, it is just the world as it is. But to you, carrying the echo of the journey, it is the aftermath of giants. The fields lie on lows, the rivers trace glacial melt paths, the hills are moraines, the valleys are U-shaped scars. What you see is not simply the present, it is a palimpsest, a canvas painted over by time, yet never fully erased. Mainstream history tells you the Ice Age ended around 10,000 years ago, ushering in the Holocene, the age you now inhabit. Yet scientists still argue whether the Ice Age is truly over, or whether you live in a mere interglacial pause, a warm breath between frozen epochs. Some believe ice will return, as it always has, marching back in slow inevitability. Others suggest human influence has bent the cycle, reshaping destiny. The truth remains unresolved. You walk forward under the stars, aware that the future may yet hold another sheet of white. Quirky remnants remind you of continuity. Consider the woolly mammoth, gone but not forgotten. DNA samples pulled from permafrost are being studied by geneticists, who whisper of resurrection, of cloning, of recreating the shaggy giants to walk once more. Whether this is science or dream, hubris or hope, no one yet knows. Still, the thought lingers. Perhaps one day, children will stand in a park and watch mammoths graze, unaware of the gulf of millennia bridged. Fringe whispers drift into your thoughts as the night deepens. Some claim humans carry Ice Age memory and myth, the floods remembered in ancient stories, the cold echoed in fears of endless winter, the great beasts transfigured into dragons and monsters of lore. Did our ancestors carve their memories into legend to preserve them? Scientists cannot prove such links, but the resonance is uncanny. You reach a quiet lake, its surface smooth as glass, reflecting stars above. You kneel at the shore, watching ripples spread as you touch the water. This lake, like so many, is a child of glaciers. Without the Ice Age, it would not exist. The fish beneath the surface, the reeds along the bank, the frogs calling from shadows, all are here because ice once carved a hollow, then melted away to fill it. You realize that your evening reflection exists only because of a world long gone. The wind softens, the night hushes. You feel the weight of the journey, glaciers advancing, floods surging, mammoths wandering, hunters painting caves, rivers carving continents, soils preserving memory. It has been a story not only of ice but of life, life shaped, challenged and remade by the frozen world. You carry it with you now, a tale that began in the whisper of snowflakes and ends in the whisper of your own breath. And now, as you sit by this lake beneath the stars, the narration itself begins to slow, to soften, to stretch like twilight lengthening. You have walked far, and the story has grown full. It is time to rest. The world around you blurs into calm. The wind that once roared across ice sheets is now a gentle sigh through leaves. The rivers that thundered with meltwater now murmur like a lullaby. The mammoths that once shook the ground are now shadows, fading kindly into memory. You are safe here, listening, drifting. Let the images dissolve like snow melting in spring. See the glaciers shrink into mist. The mammoths walk quietly into the horizon. The hunters set down their spears, their fires glowing faintly, and then dimming. Let the valleys fill with silence. The soils rest undisturbed. The stars remain steady above. You are here, in this moment, warm, breathing, calm. The Ice Age has passed, yet its memory lingers gently around you, like a blanket of snow, not cold but comforting. You can let go now. You can breathe deeper. You can surrender to rest. So close your eyes. Imagine the world softening, the edges blurring, the air growing warmer. Imagine you are wrapped in the hush of 10,000 years of peace, the long exhale of a planet at rest. And as you drift, know this, the story is not lost. The Ice Age lives in stone, in soil, in rivers, in you. Its whisper is eternal, its memory safe. You may sleep now, knowing you have walked with it, listened to it, carried it into your dreams. Good night, traveler. Rest well, and let the world of ice fade into gentle silence.